Want to get caught up on the latest, greatest bioprocessing equipment and solutions without putting in travel requests, flying across the country, spending gobs of money and time getting harassed by salespeople? Of course you do. Register for Bioprocess Online's BioExpo Live, being held July 30th through August 1st. This inaugural expo is a fantastic opportunity for biopharma companies and contract manufacturers to evaluate the latest and greatest from the comfort of your desktop or mobile device. Conveniently, we've broken down the lineup into upstream solutions on July 30th, downstream solutions July 31st, and quality analytical and data solutions on August 1st. It's absolutely free to register for this series of short, digestible, and interactive sessions. Just hit the link in today's show notes to register for BioExpo Live today. Listen up, all you artificial intelligence and biotech detractors. I see you out there in the Reddit forums and on Twitter or X or whatever they're calling this platform that brings out the worst in humanity these days. AI and drug discovery and design. It's all hype, you say. It's all smoke and mirrors. I'm Matt Pillar. This is the Business of Biotech, and my guest on today's show begs to differ. He's not a Silicon Valley meets Cambridge upstart either. He's a veteran of big bio, a biotech entrepreneur who's demonstrated some pretty nice exits, and a guy whose company has what it alleges to be the first AI-designed antibody in the clinic and in humans. His name is Aron Knickerbocker. He's president and CEO at Aulos Bioscience. And on today's show, we're going to get to know where he came from, what makes him tick, and we're going to learn about how Aulos is leveraging its unique and tech-centric approach to drug design in what's become a very competitive IL-2 space that's dominated by the big dogs in biopharma. Aron, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Matt. Really great to be here.
It's great to have you here. I really appreciate you coming on, and especially, I mean, this episode is going to drop in a few weeks, but as we sit here right now, you're probably a little bit tired from a very successful and busy ASCO meeting, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But like I said, I want to start by sort of getting to know you a bit and what makes you tick and what inspires you and what inspired you back in the day to get into science in the first place.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've always loved science. Going back to junior high and high school, it always appealed to me. It was a source of endless interest, particularly biology, but all the sciences. And I remember this segment on the CBS Evening News that I saw with Dan Rather, so that tells you how old I am. But it was a piece on the emerging science of biotechnology and the ability to make these recombinant proteins in the lab that then could be used for therapeutic or other purposes. And I just thought that sounded amazing and so cool. So I thought I wanted to do that. But then my practical side compelled me to apply instead to engineering school when I applied to college. So I actually enrolled as a chemical engineering major, which is a great discipline, but I lasted about a semester in that. I realized that's not where my heart was. I really wanted to study biology. And so I switched majors and moved into the molecular biology track. And at that time, I was going to a school that was full of pre-med. So most of my classmates who were in the biology program wanted to be doctors. And I was a bit of an oddball in that was not the route I was initially headed. I was planning to get a PhD and become a research scientist. That was my goal. So I worked in a lab all through college, and when I graduated, I decided to take a little time off to work for pay in a lab and also to repay some student loans and, see how I like the business of doing science on a day-to-day basis. So initially I worked in a research lab doing malaria research in St. Louis at Washington University. And then from there went to Bristol Myers Squibb to their site in Princeton, New Jersey, doing drug discovery and cardiovascular disease. And I really enjoyed those experiences. Spent almost 4 years in the labs post undergraduate. And over the course of that time frame, realized I wanted to learn more about the business of life science, pharmaceuticals, and hopefully biotechnology. So I changed tracks. I decided I would not get the PhD, but I would go to business school instead because I knew nothing about it at the time. and realized that. So I went to pursue an MBA and get a general management degree. And that's been a good pairing because I still love the science. I work with scientists all the time, but I'm not the expert anymore. But I bring that sort of hybrid background between the business and the science and that intersection. I think that's been helpful for my career.
Yeah, it's interesting because, I've certainly had bench scientists, lab scientists who have become successful CEOs and biotech leaders on the show. But often I don't hear the one phrase that you shared that you really enjoyed that work. You love that work. Like usually it's like, well, I realized within 12 to 18 months, the lab was not for me. It just, wasn't my personality. It was uh, lonely, boring, whatever you want to call it.
Well, I experienced that array of emotions as well. It can be very challenging, frustrating work when things don't go as planned, or they take much longer, or you can't explain the data, or things just are not predictable, and so it takes you down a lot of dark alleys sometimes. That's what makes me admire scientists so much, is that it does demand patience and tenacity and creativity, I think. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to learn more about how the whole business of life sciences worked, and that was my motivation.
Yeah, yeah, and there, I mentioned kind of sarcastically in my intro Reddit. Like I'm
Yeah,
thinking specifically about the biotech subreddit on Reddit, which is I don't know if you I don't know if you're a Reddit guy or if you ever follow that, but that
I use it
that
occasionally. I don't follow it closely.
yeah,
Yeah.
that particular subreddit, it's germane to this conversation because that particular subreddit, there are often comments on that subreddit about how this should be qualified as the biotech HR subreddit, because so much of the activity on that subreddit is people who are in a
Hmm.
similar situation to you, who want or desire, have aspirations to move to the business side
Hmm.
um, of biotech. You did that by, I guess step one was saying, hey, I got to go get an MBA and learn the business side. But I'm curious, like, just to those people, what advice would you give them, having done it and done it quite successfully? What advice would you give that research scientist who, there's a lot of aspiration out there, by the way. There's probably not enough room for all of them, but what advice would you give them?
Yeah, when I'm talking with young people who are coming into the industry, I always ask them, what really motivates you, and not necessarily in the work life, but in any aspect of life. Where do you derive intrinsic motivation? Because that's where you're going to be in the flow state. You're going to have the most energy, the most inquiry, and you'll learn the most, I think, in that area. So sometimes people think they want to switch tracks just to get a new job, and that's fine. But ask yourself, does that job use what intrinsically motivates you?
Mm-hmm.
And if so, then that's probably a match. Look for that Venn diagram of yourself versus what the opportunity is offering. That's kind of what I've done over the years, and that's been very helpful. Um, and also try to imagine, the ideal career arc that you might have. If you could picture it as of today, what would it look like in a few years? Because that often informs the steps that are needed to reach that. Not necessarily a specific title, but just the type of work that you would be doing in a few years. What are you aiming for?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of difference do you want to make? So I think these are helpful sort of guideposts to frame the decision. And I don't think everybody should go to business school or get a PhD or go to med school. I think everybody has an intrinsic uh, set of characteristics that really suit them for particular types of work. And then when they find that, they often excel.
Yeah. Aside from pursuing, in your case, pursuing the MBA and learning, checking the boxes, right? Like learning the how to tick and tie
Yeah.
as a business manager. What did you have to do mentally, personality wise, to make that transition? Because that's another, I mean, it's another very important element of the conversation. If you're, I mean, not to stereotype, but if you're a good bench scientist, you're not inherently a good people person, leader, motivator, beyond, as I said, checking the boxes and just kind of following the lines of business. So was there anything that you like had to prepare inside Aaron Knickerbocker's brain, or change or modify to successfully go down that route?
Well, I would say the sort of thematic difference I noticed in the business education versus the science education was the emphasis on breadth versus depth. Not to say that each can't be the other in various contexts, but to be a very successful scientist, you often need depth of expertise in a given area and really devoting your life's work to that, which is an amazing thing. I think to be a successful business person, you have to think very broadly because you have to understand how the elements that construct that business actually function and be conversant and be able to make decisions across a range of areas that may not be in your core area of expertise, but that you have to do as an executive. So that was something that was very different to me, but I liked it a lot because I think I tend to be sort of broadly oriented. But it took me a little while to get that confidence. I remember first year in business school, we had a team project and it was some marketing project with some analytics around it. And, I thought I knew a way to address the problem, but I didn't have the confidence because I thought, oh, I'm a biology guy. Historically, this is not my expertise. These guys have worked in accounting and finance and marketing before this, so they probably know it better than I do. Turns out I was onto something and I didn't say it, and I should have. So that was a lesson learned. That it doesn't matter what your background is if you've got the insight and the ability to sort of dig into a problem, dissect it, and solve. Do it and bring that to the discussion. And I sort of encourage that among my peers and colleagues now that it doesn't matter to me what function you hold or what title you hold. If you have a view or a suggestion, please bring it forward. I think the organization benefits from that breadth. So that, coming back to the question, that was the notably different aspect of pursuing the graduate degree in business versus a science degree.
Yeah. You mentioned that your first role, excuse me, in big bio and big pharma was with BMS as a research scientist.
Yeah.
Was it after you pursued your MBA that you went on to work in those corporate business development positions with like Amgen, J&J, and Genentech?
Yes, that's right.
So tell me, like looking back on that period, you make the decision, you earn your MBA, you throw yourself into the business side of biopharma.
Mm-hmm.
Was it intentional or in retrospect beneficial to stay in big pharma and work for those large companies on the business side, leading up to your foray into biotech, like true biotech entrepreneurship with startup companies?
Yeah. Well, I would say it was intentional because those are the offers that I had. I wasn't getting offers from little biotech startups.
Right.
But I also thought I would benefit from going to a larger organization. And I'm glad I did that. So it was both intentional and beneficial to pursue that sort of sequence of larger companies. And then if you look at my career, they basically tapered in size, at least by staff, over time. And there's some method to that madness. So when I took the job out of business school at Amgen, it was a brand new sales and marketing commercial rotational program they started for MBA recruits. And I was one of the first 2 hires into that program. And I really liked what was being proposed there because it was, again, this idea of breadth. So because it was a rotation program, they would have people do various functions, sales. So that's what I did at first. I was out in the field selling a product for cancer, a supportive care product called Neupogen, which keeps the white blood cell count high after chemotherapy and helps prevent infections. So I like that as sort of the diversity of experience. So did sales, and they had me do market research, again, in oncology. So I've been in the oncology space a long time. And then brand management. Some of the early direct patient work was stuff I worked on at Amgen. as well as a pipeline product that was in development at that time. And over the course of that, I supported analyses for licensing and M&A transactions that Amgen was looking at. And so that's how I got to know the corporate development and licensing teams. And I think they liked my work and, found me collaborative. And when an opening up came up in corporate development, I jumped at that chance because I really like the idea of building a business, and that's still what I do. But by doing that through deal making and looking externally, having a broad mind and seeing if there's a way to broaden the pipeline and add to the value of the business by alliances that bring assets in either through M&A or licensing. So that was how I made that transition at Amgen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. After that stint, I guess, for lack of a better term, in Big Bio at Amgen and J&J and Genentech, you spent a decade at five. This is when sort of the leadership chops at smaller bios that led to some pretty nice exits, or at least you played a hand in them. Started. So you were at Five Prime for a decade. You started there as VP of Business Development and ended up the president and CEO of the company.
Right.
That led, as I said, up to Five Prime's acquisition by Amgen, which, I'm sure some of the networking you did when you were at those big bios paid off. After that, you founded Raise Bio, which was acquired by BMS pretty quickly thereafter.
Right.
What inspired? Well, I'd love to hear some detail on, the work you put into those acquisitions. But before that point, what inspired the move to Five Prime and Raise?